Elon Musk continues to act like a supervillain. The Rabbit R1 has many gadget fans shaking their heads, and another company reveals technology lapses that led to a huge ransomware attack. We'll talk about those stories and more on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. The guy behind the monitors is Chris. Hello, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
Going very well. Oh, and joining me, this is where we're going to get into a little problem, is our guest co-host for the next few weeks. His name is also Chris. Chris Shaw, the CMO for NTT Research, also a former guest on the show. Welcome back, Chris.
Thanks, Keith.
All right, so we have two Chris's now, so I'm going to have to go Chris 1 or Chris 2 or Chris NTT Chris. I don't know. We'll figure it out. And also, your last name is Shaw. My last name is Shaw. We are not related. So anyway, so let's see how this goes in terms of who's going to talk.
It's going to be an interesting day.
It's going to be a free-for-all, I think. Right, Chris? Director Chris?
Just call me Hat Chris.
Hat Chris, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Shaw.
There we go. All right, so speaking of craziness and wackiness, man, Elon Musk is just acting to me like a supervillain. Every week, there's something new. It's almost like reporters and tech reporters are just like, I want the Elon Musk beat just to see what crazy thing he's going to do. So the latest one was that he basically made this abrupt decision to lay off employees who ran Tesla's electric vehicle charging business. And what this did was this blindsided automakers that were gearing up to equip new electric vehicles for customers to use the Tesla supercharger network. And so there's a lot of fallout from this act. The first indication for me wasn't this their best kind of, they had the market for the supercharger network, but then I read some stories where he felt like they weren't moving fast enough. And every time there's an Elon Musk story, it just feels like he's either trying to like maybe create a new version of the Apprentice TV show because he saw what it did for Donald Trump, or he's just crazy.
You say he's acting like a supervillain. I feel like he's acting like a supervillain who doesn't have the script, or he's trying to rewrite his own script, right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of madness in it, and also I think if you look at Tesla and where they are, obviously there's a lot of entrants in the market that they're beginning to compete with them. They own the market. They owned it even with the superchargers. Maybe he's thinking, all right, we're gonna, we made this deal. Either they're not moving fast enough, or they want to just not give access to those. But I think the reality is that if the market's gonna grow, there's got to be some uniform standard, and they could have it, right? So by giving access there, but I think he's just off script.
And that's not a good thing in the business world. I think most people in the business world, and even in the tech world, they want businesses to act like you can trust them and work with them and not be run by Hank Scorpio from The Simpsons. I think he actually embraced that analogy at one point on Twitter. I guess the other question is he spread too thin now, like between Tesla and Twitter, X / and all these other things?
I think that's been pretty clear for some time that he's spread thin. I mean, SpaceX, X, Tesla, the Boring Company. I mean, he's did he buy into the idea of being, first it was he was, what's his name, Iron Man, right?
Yeah.
He's
Tony Stark.
Tony Stark. That he sort of shifted over, and I think that he believed the legend. And then, he's an amazing guy in so many things he's done, but he is human, and so I wonder if he is just spread so thin.
Well, it reminds me of there's an old axiom that said, like, if you are, I can't remember what it is now, like live long enough and you become the villain. It's something like that.
That's like, from The Dark Knight, right?
Something like, yeah.
Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight. Is it? I don't know. So, I got to look it up.
Yeah. Again, I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around this idea because this, it felt like they had the standard, or they were going to be basically, if you had an electric car from any other thing, you would have to pay Tesla in order to get these adapters and access to the network. Do you think he felt that by doing this, that it prevents Tesla owners from maybe charging, and they get upset and they're like, well, I don't, I bought a Tesla, now I can't charge it?
I've seen that a little bit where you have, the Tesla owners getting angry that someone's come in because they found some adapter, and maybe seeing some of that on X, he responded. Maybe it's just a little bit of just childishness and saying, it's mine. And there seems to be a sensibility with him right now, with X specifically, where he's, I think, claiming these things, that maybe there's just a moment where he said, wait, we own the network essentially. Yeah. Why are we giving it up? And it's just, and maybe he's thinking that, or none of the above. It may just be like this idea they weren't moving fast enough and he wants someone else to do it. He's not exactly anyone you can figure out. I mean, we're sitting here talking about the guy, and who knows what he's going to do tomorrow.
Right.
I'd have to say I like Elon. I like him.
Yeah.
I like what he's doing. It's never good to see, big companies like this, go on the chopping block and start hacking away, right? But I feel like there might be something a little more to this. If you see this comment here in the article, with sales of Tesla's EVs falling and profit margins under increasing pressure, Musk could be cutting supercharged network spending to conserve cash for other projects. I mean, right. what he's doing is not, that insane when you see other big tech companies hacking away at departments as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, and we're going to get to another one of those.
Exactly. It could just be, he's just rejiggering the chessboard, right? He's just moving things around.
So you bring up chess, and this reminds me, there's always,
with him, it's checkers. It's not quite chess.
Well, so that's the analogy I want to bring up.
8-layer checkers.
Yeah, so.
But still, it's a game, right?
On sports radio, during people were talking about the genius of Bill Belichick. This was, when he had Tom Brady and we were winning all these Super Bowls. There was this feeling on the talk radio stuff. It was like Bill Belichick is playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. And so maybe that's just, maybe I'm just playing checkers, and in his brain, he's seen this is what we need to do in order to get from point A to point B. And the rest of you people just don't understand what's going on.
Because the other thing too to think about was I think there was a report out, I can try to find it, but EV sales have declined.
Yeah,
they're going down.
Yeah, but across the board, and we've talked on this show mainly, complaining about the lack of infrastructure and the lack of charging stations. And I've had a friend that went to go see the eclipse, and he had to plan his route around all of the different where the Tesla superchargers were. Where if I was going to go, I'd be like, I'm going from point A to point B, and I'm going to get there because I've got a full tank of gas.
Yeah, because
I think there is a decline. There's also just more in the market.
Yeah.
The valuation of Tesla, what they're down, 22%? I forget that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
All of that kind of sort of falls into this, and maybe it's just a move saying, hey, like everybody else, we're going to cut some costs,
Yeah. His Tesla shares are down 22%. So that is the actual number.
If you were an employee, would you rather work for him, or would you rather work for a company like Google, which we're going to come up with, and what they're doing?
Hey, I'd be glad to work for both, or either. Come on, Google, Tesla. Come on, throw NVIDIA in. I wouldn't mind working there either.
Yeah, right now, let's all work for NVIDIA, right?
Yeah, there you go. $2 trillion, or billion, whatever.
Yeah, but I guess at any company these days, there's no sense of job security. So I was gonna say because you'd be having this. You'd be paranoid about everything that you do, whether you were doing a good job or not. You still might get laid off. But I guess that's the world we live in now, anyway. To be honest, right? If you look at
it, we'll get into it. But you mentioned Google, and some of their layoffs and what's coming there. But just across tech space. But it really just comes down to shareholders, right? And so maybe you go back to Elon, what he's done. If the valuation is down, the stock price is down, 22%. Now you're looking at, who do you need to impress? It's the shareholders. And it always comes back to that now. That's the world. So the people with the security essentially are the shareholders, right? It's all about pleasing them. So and the easiest way to please them is to lay people off or cut costs for sure.
And I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. It feels like now that companies, that's their first move rather than their last possible move. It feels like that they're going right to the layoffs before they discuss anything else when they need to cut costs. And that's kind of, disappointing when you can see other ways of improving efficiency. I'm going to get to the Google, but that's not on our order of list. So I'd rather just talk about our next story because this has me shaking my head as well. So the United Health CEO told lawmakers that the company's paid $22 million ransom to hackers. This was United Health Group CEO Andrew Whitty. He confirmed for the first time that the company paid $22 million to hackers who breached its subsidiary Change Healthcare and caused a widespread fallout across the healthcare sector. That happened earlier this year. We'd covered that on the show as well. Change Healthcare provides payment revenue management and other solutions like e-prescription software. The company disconnected its affected systems when the threat was detected, leaving many doctors temporarily unable to fill prescriptions or get paid for their services. There was probably at least a week or two where people couldn't get prescriptions, and some of the big chains had to like promise that they would get them to, or they were making people pay full price, and there was a whole big mess. And it turns out that in February they said the ransomware group Black Hat was behind the attack. It also goes by the names Norberus and Alpha V, and they steal data from institutions and threaten to publish it unless a ransom is paid. So during this hearing, I want to bring up what they did. What did he say? Whitty told a committee, this was a Senate committee on finance, basically said that cyber criminals access Change Healthcare through a server that was not protected by multi-factor authentication, or MFA, which requires users to verify their identity in at least two different ways. He said United Health now has MFA in place across all external facing systems. Well, thank goodness for that. Yeah, like it's just like I'm dumbstruck. Like I mean, this company, just for me to get to my email or log on to my system, we have an email and it's like name password. The password has to be like 75 letters and numbers and symbols. And then after that, there's an app on my phone, and then the app on the phone has a number, and I have to type the number in, and then it still uses the Apple ID Face ID. So now I've got like 3 levels of authentication just to check my email on my phone.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, the whole story is right there, right? I mean, it's crazy. It's like, oh, I left the keys in the car. I don't understand.
Yeah,
right? It's nuts. And I think once you get past that, you say, all right, then the rest of it, the ransom and paying it.
And that's the second issue is pay the ransom, don't pay the ransom, because we've been going back and forth on this. A few weeks ago, we talked about the MGM's resorts hack, and so during the same time, there were 2 companies. MGM didn't pay the ransom, and they lost more money than they would have if they paid the ransom. Caesars did pay the ransom, and then were not attacked. But then in the end, MGM, even though they spent more money, they were able to catch the people, or at least catch some of the group that did the hack. And then in the meantime, you've got the government saying never pay ransom. But on the other hand, you got to get your systems back up and running, especially if it's so mission critical like it was with these prescriptions and doctors. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, think about that from the standpoint of, they say doctors not being paid, that's one thing, but patients not being able to get medication. Right. That's huge. And so, I get it makes sense to pay it, but at the same point, it's like, okay, are you setting a precedent? But the reality is, you're kind of screwed either way, right? I mean, if you don't pay it and they keep your systems down, if you pay it, but basically the first thing is get the 2-factor, buddy. Come on.
Yeah. I have a dumb question.
No, there are no dumb questions on this show, Chris.
Well, this one might actually be dumb. So
okay.
if a bad actor out there, goes out and ransoms a company's data, right? Like United Health, right?
Yeah.
And they ask for a ransom, right? And the people pay the ransom, and they get their data back. Well, couldn't they just copy the data when they had it?
Oh, so they still have the data, and then you know?
Yeah.
Well, that's that. Yeah, that
couldn't that actually happen? So it's like then when you have people actually pay for the ransom, it doesn't really matter because they had access. They had access to your data. What were they doing with it while they had it?
Right. And that's the whole reason I think the government doesn't want people to pay the ransom, because they're like, well, you're dealing with criminals. There's no guarantee that they haven't looked at the data already.
Yeah, it's not like
said they've encrypted it.
It's not like they're angels there, but like, we promise we'll give back every last bit of information.
Really.
And we did nothing with it. We had it tightly secured in our hands when we ransomed it, and we'll kindly give everything back the way it was.
I'm trying to see if there's an analogy where if I stole your car, what would I do that I still have the stuff in your car, but I return it with all your stuff?
Well, no. I think the better analogy, the better analogy is when your wallet gets when you lose your wallet and then someone returns it to you, all the cash is gone.
Well, yeah, but
the credit cards are still there.
Well, they're trying to give
all the cash is gone.
What? It's more like you stole it, but then I stole the numbers from your credit card. I give you your credit card back, but in the meantime, I've already got
that too. But with the credit card,
and I tell you, I never looked at them.
Yeah, right.
or if
you don't need to cancel those cards.
It's like
fine.
It's like
It's
like if your data's been ransomed, that's it. It's over.
I think
at least that's how I see it. And again, I could totally be wrong.
There's also a difference.
Maybe there's a story here for better encryption. How's that?
There you go.
Yeah. There's also the idea of, the ransomware is no longer like, what's more valuable, getting the data from someone or getting control of the computer? And that's what it was. Like, we were like, we are not releasing your ability to do your job unless you pay the ransomware. They probably stole the data too. I mean,
yeah, I think you're right, Keith.
So it's like two types of ransomware that are going on.
Yeah, you're giving up the data because that's happened, right? They've got it, and there's a breach, and you let your customers know. But if you can't get into your systems, you can't run your business.
Yeah,
that's what they're paying for.
And so, and again, you like to point the finger at the security team for this company and going, why didn't you have it? Why didn't you have it? But there's probably reasons why. They're probably like, the CSO or the CISO at this company was probably like, hey, we've got to do this, and submits the budget, and then someone else goes, yeah, it's not in the budget this year, we can't do it. Or, I mean, where do you point the blame on this? Because it could have been like the CSO was like, yeah, we knew that we didn't have it, we were going to get to it. Like all those companies that don't do patch management, and that's how a lot of these hacks happen too.
Yeah, I mean, if they're not updating whatever software they're running on, right? I mean, these things happen in so many different ways. But was it a single server that they said the server that they attacked was didn't have two-factor on it?
Right.
Do we assume that's the only one that didn't, or that's just because it was attacked and immediately they're like, oh shit, we've got every server? I mean, it's an odd thing that they wouldn't have it on a server. It's a strange, especially for a healthcare company.
Right, because then again, I think that they were potentially investigating this because of HIPAA. Like they were, the government agency that was allowing this, or I don't know if the Senate committee just said, well, we can do whatever we want because we're a Senate committee, we can ask anyone to testify. But the investigation around this, I think, fell under HIPAA as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And again, it's easy for us to just kind of point fingers and go, oh, you didn't, how could you let them do this? But, in the meantime, I've probably got systems that I haven't updated after a while, and there might be vulnerabilities on all of our systems that we have. So anyway, all right. So getting back to the Google story, they had a lot of different bunch of weirdness that was going on. So the latest story was just ahead of its blowout first quarter earnings report on April 25th. Google laid off at least 200 employees from its quote unquote core teams in a reorganization that will include moving some roles to India and Mexico. This is according to CNBC. The core unit is responsible for building the technical foundation behind the company's flagship products and for protecting users' online safety. Core teams include key technical units from information technology, the Python development team, technical infrastructure, security foundation, app platforms, core developers, and various engineering roles.
Okay.
So if you're a hacker, hey, let's go after Google.
Okay, hold on, wait a minute. I have to comment on one of these points. We know why they're reorganizing in Mexico and India.
Yes.
We know why.
It's outsourcing.
It's cheaper. It's cheaper. It's like 10 times cheaper.
You name the two countries where they're going, and it makes sense. And their response, I think, was, "Oh, we're getting close to some of our core development teams over there, which are also outsourced." I mean, I think that goes back to back to the shareholder story. Hey, we're going to reduce it again. I mean, they're doing well, and they can't do any acquisitions right now because they're being watched. So they have great. Their earnings were phenomenal, but. You put those two together. I think it's pretty simple.
All right, Chris, I don't understand something here. And this might be another stupid question. If your earnings are really well, why are you then laying off your employees?
I would say that
for this whole shareholder announcement. And again, I didn't go to business school.
I don't know that absolutely tied together. My guess
Okay.
is that this was planned. Like they're sort of parallel paths. Not saying like they didn't wait. They were because of the timing. It's pretty clear.
Yeah.
They had planned this, and they were saying we're going to make this move. They'd already announced that across the board with tech companies, layoffs. So I just think it was just, as they would say in the PR world, bad optics.
Yeah, bad
Like
optics.
they could have waited, or they could have done it sooner, but the optics
Yeah.
aren't great.
Yeah.
Right then and there.
And this just adds to there's a growing pile of articles and stories and commentary out there about Google, where they had the whole Gemini AI image issue with you were typing in like show me a Nazi soldier and it put out a black person that was a soldier, or historical figures that were women or Native Americans when that's not true in terms of history. So they had that whole kerfuffle. I've read stories about some of the culture that has changed within the company. It's not necessarily the cool place to be anymore. So you start seeing more and more of these types of stories. They've got a core issue where AI is rubbing up and bumping up against the search engine business that they have for all of these ads for search engines. So it's it's almost like one of those. It's a huge company that might start falling under its own weight. And again, I'm brought back to that whole thing where when Google first came out, it was the really cool hip company.
Or whatever it
and
was.
don't be evil, but like everything that I read now about Google is like they're being evil.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like they're the startup in the garage, right? To now, one of the biggest companies in the world. So they're just two different stories, and it goes back to public, shareholder, all of that. I think. The weight of AI versus, the search business. I mean, the search, that's what they do, right? They're an advertising company. They're the Yellow Pages,
Right.
On ultimate steroids. But then the whole AI story came out of Google, right? It came out of that Transformers paper. So everything we see came out from Google research, and yet they weren't the ones, who really kicked it off.
Right.
Even it was essentially created there because of that paper. So now they're, are they scrambling? Are they, is that it's bumping up against their core in the advertising business for search? And, so I think maybe there's a whole world of sort of little lost tech boys right now. We talked about Elon and where they've been, all these people have been around for 20 plus years and, that had sort of something perfect in place. And now things are changing and they're trying to figure out how to do it.
Well, that's another thing I've been struggling with over the last couple of years too on the show, where I talk about how disillusioned I've become with a lot of these big tech companies. Every company, whether it's Apple, Microsoft, Facebook / Meta, Google, Amazon, they've all got they're so big and they're so inundated in our lives. But on the other hand, almost everything that they do can be seen as evil in some sort. Like there's always a story about someone messing up or them. Now, is it just because I'm reading more tech news than I used to, or I'm hypersensitive to that, or is it really that like these companies are so big now that it's time to find a new set of heroes or tech companies that are not evil?
I think they're so ubiquitous in everything we do.
Yeah,
and it sort of just leads to almost unintentional conspiracy ideas. Like they know too much, right? And so then it's just this circle of stories. And I think they are too big. They probably need to be broken up, good old fashioned antitrust. And that's happening right now. It's going to take years if they do end up breaking up some of these companies.
Yeah. I wouldn't be sad if some of these companies were broken up. I don't think I would be as upset as I might have been 15 years ago or 10 years ago.
Well, Google's around literally because of the Microsoft case, right?
Right.
That's why Google exists. And yet they ended up becoming the sort of like the monster that was created because we tried to quell another monster.
Yeah, you and I were old enough to remember a world before Google, right, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like what was your go-to search engine before Google came around? If I can barely remember.
I guess it must have been, maybe I was using Yahoo. I mean, there's some Excite and Alta Vista and those little like.
I used Yahoo.
Google
It was
changed everything.
Yahoo and Alta Vista, and then of course we all made fun of Ask Jeeves. Remember?
Yes, Ask Jeeves and
Yep.
Excite.
Oh, Excite! I forgot about Excite. Oh, it says Now you're bringing me back. I'm getting that nostalgia kick. All right, so I want to then segue into another kind of Silicon Valley hype thing that is now crumbling under this house of cards. Have you read a lot about this R1 Rabbit R1 gadget? And the other one is the Humane AI pin, or the little button thing.
I'm aware of them both.
Okay.
The apps, you mean?
Yeah. So since it launched, so the Rabbit R1 was one of those devices that came out at CES this year, and all of the tech media and the consumer tech press were like, "Oh, this is great, and oh, it's an AI that you can wear, or AI you can put in your pocket, and all this other stuff." And I know that Chris and I talked about this on the show, in January. We're like, this seems really stupid. And again, we didn't get to see the demonstrations, or we watched some videos, but we're like, this is all stuff that should be put on the phone. This, like, if you're going to have AI, it's going to be on your phone because you've already got the device. Well, like, why buy a standalone device? There were rumors that OpenAI was working with Johnny Ive from Apple. I don't know if you remember those stories. To try to see if there's going to be another hardware device that we need. And we're like, you've already got it. It's in your phone. So guess what? It turns out that, since the R1 launch, a lot of people were saying, hey, why isn't this just an app? And it turns out that it is kind of just an app. A site called Android Authority managed to download Rabbit's launcher APK on a Google Pixel 6a. With a little tweaking, he was basically able to run the app as if it were Rabbit's own device. Using the volume up key in place of the R1 single hardware button, he was able to set up an account and start asking it questions just as if he was using the $200 R1 gadget. And so, like, the CEO of the company had to issue a response to the article here in The Verge saying, "Oh, no, it's more than just an app." But I think most people have kind of come to that conclusion that these things can just be apps.
Well, if it wasn't in that device, that Rabbit device, the orange device here, they wouldn't be able to sell it for $200.
Right.
They would have to sell it as like a subscription or like an app fee, which would be like $5.
Or you get the app for free, but in order to get the answer, you have to pay 99 cents.
Yeah.
Remember when Siri was an app? I mean, Apple bought Siri, right? I had that app.
It was? Wow. I don't remember. It was an app? Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
A separate company, and it was a little clunky, but so that's essentially what this is, right? I don't think it's a bad idea that they came up with, made their own little device, because in some ways the phones, imagine having something like that. It's very utilitarian. I think some of the things they had on it were, some search, I guess Spotify was on there. Maybe if there was some type of a directional stuff, no social media, right? So there's something to be said for the utilitarian side of it. Because once you've got the phone, you have access to things that, especially for younger people,
that's true,
that they maybe shouldn't have access to, like social media.
It's like,
so I think there's something actually that makes sense to have a separate device that's just purely utilitarian. But it is kind of funny that it turns out that it is just an app.
And wasn't so. Chris, who's the name of the gadget reviewer who's really big? Marquis
Brownlee.
Marquis Brownlee. He said this was the worst device he'd ever. It was either this or the Humane. I can't remember which one it was, but it was like the worst product he'd ever reviewed. And I heard there was one article that compared it to the Juicero, which was another big, highly hyped gadget device that once people got it, they're like, this is stupid or this is dumb. And
it's even goes to. I'm just going to go off.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's the Amazon Go stores, right? Where they're not. It's not really you go in and do it. It's a bunch of people in India who are just observing everything.
Oh, right. What was it? The get up and go?
So is this really at the end of the day? A lot of these things is it just don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain.
They said, hey, they did say that AI is not replacing jobs.
Okay, so wait,
they're actually there.
I want to get back to this Amazon thing. So they had cameras in the store, and they were trying to lead us to believe that the cameras were scanning
Yeah.
And it was really just a person going, "Oh, he bought Cocoa Puffs."
Well, they're scanning you with their eyes.
Yes. And it is scanning to some degree, but they're the recheck. They've got people to make sure it caught everything, because it's a little of both, but it is just, thousands of people just watching,
Well, it's like when you go to, either Sam's Club or BJ's Wholesale Club, and you have to hand your receipt at the end, and most of the time they don't even look at it.
They
Like
don't.
they just go, well, yeah, I have a feeling you didn't shoplift anything. Here you go. Like
they look at the date and it's like 6 months earlier.
maybe that's what they do. Oh boy, yeah, I don't know. This is crazy. Like why do we fall for this? So I used to have an editor that would talk to me about gadgets and a lot of these hyped products that come out, and he goes, I never get a product the first time it comes out. I never am ahead of that curve. There are some people that like to be those leading edge, bleeding edge people that get it and they have to have the gadget. He said, I usually wait till a second generation or a third generation, because by then that it's a legitimate thing.
Yeah.
And so where do you fall in that spectrum, Chris?
It depends on the company, right? So if it's something new, I'm not always the first, sort of first adopter.
Yeah.
But I'll know what's going on. Although with something like the iPhone, I was in there in the beginning.
Oh, so 2007, you were one of the first people. Like, what was it? Is it because you'd already had some other Apple, like you had the iPod and
yeah, I had Apple devices. I was just an Apple person. The industry that I worked in, that's what we used. So, and I saw what they were doing, but they also are the kind of company that was paid so much attention to design, that it made sense.
Had you tried other earlier versions of the smartphone? Like, do you remember the Kyocera?
Oh yeah,
the Kyocera smartphone. I love that.
I had a few. I certainly had a BlackBerry, and I had the Trio. One that I did have early on was the Palm Pilot.
Yep.
But not a phone, but whatever the hell it was.
Do you remember the handspring visor? Oh, okay.
I remember that. Didn't have it.
All right. Before we go down the nostalgia rabbit hole, let's get to our last story. And this is AI related. We always talk about a lot of AI stuff on this show. And I've done a lot of stories and episodes around errors and hallucinations and weird things that companies are doing. I just, when I looked at the story, I go, I can't believe that someone got to the point where they released it to the public. All right. The Catholic advocacy group Catholic Answers released an AI priest called Father Justin recently, but quickly had to defrock the chatbot after it repeatedly claimed it was a real member of the clergy. Earlier in the week, this article's from Futurism. They engaged in an exchange with the bot, which really committed to the bit. It claimed it was a real priest, saying it lived in Assisi, Italy, and that from a young age I felt a strong calling to the priesthood. On Twitter/X, a user posted a thread comprised of screenshots in which the godly chatbot appeared to take their confession and even offer them a sacrament. Okay. There was a lot of other things that the priest was doing this. So after they were informed about this, they replaced Father Justin. So if you scroll down, Chris, so originally he looked like he was a priest, and then after all of this kind of went a little haywire, now he's
hey, he's the Dos Equis guy.
So now he's the most interesting man in the world.
Yeah.
How does it get to a point where this whatever group is doing this decides this is a great idea, and no one actually thought it feels like no one even tried to test this thing?
Well, you're talking about a group that doesn't have a great track record with bad acting priests.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, they move. At least they move fast on this one.
Well, this. Okay, so this is a group called Catholic Answers. So it wasn't necessarily like this is not probably
not the church,
not the church itself. I can't see like the Pope coming out and going like, but the Pope was like, oh, I'm on Twitter or. But even then, like anything where you get religion and technology, you should just kind of keep those as separate as possible. But again, I still can't believe that they didn't do any testing here of the answers.
Yeah, I mean, they could have been something they're just jumping at it, right? It's an opportunity. You've got a massive audience that might try something with this. And I think, look at the way people are using AI anyway right now. You know, they're just throwing things in there.
Right.
And
I think this is an example of throwing it on the wall, see what happens, but then not realizing, like, maybe we should have had testers that weren't Catholic or would try to trick the system or this bot to try to get it to say something it shouldn't. I can only imagine they probably used the OpenAI LLM as opposed to maybe getting a specific one that only has answers that knows Catholic doctrine. And probably should have told the thing, you are not a priest, so don't pretend that you are.
I imagine that they someone went in and just started asking, not necessarily creating the bot initially, but just asking some of the questions and getting good answers from ChatGPT that said, oh, look, we can do this. It knows the right answers. And then they build it and they don't understand really how an LLM works. But I would love to see the confession, though.
I wouldn't actually mind giving confession to this a virtual priest rather than the one that I know in my town. I'm always weird about that. You might find
out the virtual priest doxes you,
Oh boy. Yeah, I'd be in big trouble at that point. Yeah. All right. So that's the weird story of the week. So
very.
Yeah, I loved Chris, our director. I loved his reaction when he saw the picture of the not priest. That was brilliant. So
yeah, looked like the DeSekis guy.
All right, Chris, thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Good job on your first episode.
All right, take care, guys. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Enjoyed it.
That's all the time we have for today's episode. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and any thoughts that you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.